Hello students, this is a quick tutorial on why we need joins in database. If you are getting data from one table, you don't need a join. What is a join? Join is when you create a link between two tables, and we all know that MySql is called a relational database. It creates relations between tables, and it does that by linking a primary key to a corresponding foreign key in another table. The name can be different. You can use in one employee ID and the other one employee ID / something, or but it has to be the same field, the same data type. Now, if I'm getting, for example, from this table, by the way, I'm using the Sakila database. I double clicked on it. That way, you don't have to use that statement to use Sakila every time. And then in the film table, those are the columns. You can see that one of the columns here is called language ID. So now, if I just need to see all the columns in that table, all I have to do is use a select statement from Sakila. Asterisk stands for all columns. And as you can see, I have a film ID, title, description, release. I have language ID and other fields in here. Notice that I have language ID, but I don't have language name, because language name is in another table. That other table is called the language table, and the columns is language ID, name, and last update. So now, if all I need from this table is the film ID, right? I'm gonna go back to my film table. All I need is the film ID, the title, and then the language ID, and I'm gonna put commas in between. Okay. And then my from statement. So if all I need is the film ID, title, language ID, I don't need a join because all the fields are coming from one table, and that table is called film. If I run my query, I get those three: film ID, title, language ID. I'm good. Now, if in addition to the language ID, I need language name, now the language name happens to be in the language table. It's a different one. In this case, I need to create a join. In other words, a link between the two tables. So in my form statement, I need to add a second table, which is a language table, right? This one here, the table, I need to add. So now, my from statement, I have two tables instead of one. And, I can add the Sakila in here, or since Sakila is, we already double clicked on it, I can just take it off. And then in my from statement, I only have the name of the two tables. Now, if I run this query, I'm gonna have an infinite loop because I didn't create the join, the primary key referencing the foreign key. So how do I do that? Is in my where statement, which is the condition where, and then I'm gonna look for the film, and then the language ID is gonna reference equal the language ID in the other table, which is the language table. And I'm gonna go back and fix something, and I want to explain it to you quickly. So let me take this one off, and then I'm gonna go to my language table, and then I select the language ID. Now, if you run this query, you're gonna get an error because those two names are exactly the same, and MySql is not gonna know where to get that from. Is it gonna get it from the film table or from the language table? And that same goes here in the select statement. So in my select statement, I need to specify where I want that language ID to come from. Is it from the film table or from the other one, which is the language table, right? Same thing goes here. Here I have to add film language ID is gonna reference language ID, that language ID. So now I have my reference is correct, and in my select statement, I'm also specifying where that language ID comes from. Keep in mind that even though we type select and from before the where, but when the cursor runs, it goes to the table, find out, then the condition, and then it goes to select. The order is different, and you can go back to the course material where I had put all the information there. So if I run I forgot to add the language name. So this one here, language name, or I can just type, double click on it, language.name, and if I run my query, now in addition to having language ID, I also have a language name, and since name doesn't exist in the film table, it's coming from a different one, I had to create a join. keep in mind that a join, number of joins is always n minus 1 of number of tables. In other words, if you have 2 tables, you're going to have 1 join. If you have 3 tables, you're going to have 2 joins. If you have 4 tables, you're going to have 3 joins. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, let me know. Good luck.